Yeah, we're like hanging on bars, having a drink, and like, kind of post-traumatic stress syndrome. But there's Jim Cramer saying, everything's going to the moon.
Jim Rickards discussed several key points in the interview. He highlighted the disconnect between the optimism portrayed by figures like Jim Cramer and the underlying risks in the financial system, particularly regarding derivatives. Rickards explained that while derivatives can be valuable financial instruments when used properly, the proliferation of complex derivatives, such as credit default swaps, led to a situation where the risks were greatly underestimated. He recounted his experience of creating the first sovereign credit default swap and emphasized that at the time, there was no understanding of the potential scale of derivatives impact. Rickards criticized Alan Greenspan and other central bankers for their failure to grasp the magnitude of the risks posed by derivatives, especially during the 2008 financial crisis. He noted that Greenspan's approach of unbundling risks through derivatives lacked an understanding of the exponential increase in risk exposure that could result.
So there's a little cognitive dissonance there, but I'll add another. Everything you said is exactly right, Jeff. But I'll add another element, which to this day, Alan Greenspan does not understand, and I don't think any of the central bankers really understand it, which are the danger from derivatives. Now, I'm not a derivatives basher. I actually did the first sovereign credit default swap. We did it with a blank sheet of paper. There were no forms. We had to say, how many ways can the government screw you over? And it was a long list, but we had to write them all down at the time. We invented it. It was $1 billion on Italian government credit, but the counterparty was Sumitomo Milan. They were long Italy, we were short Italy, so it was an accident. We did that trade, but and Greenspan revealed this again in 2008. I know you don't like to call it the mortgage crisis, and you're right, it was a Eurodollar crisis, but the mortgage situation was bubbling. Actually, probably 2007. And the analysis, and I heard this from a lot of smart people. I think Ben Stein. He's an actor. He was in Ferris Bueller, right? Okay, so but he's smart guy. But here's what they said. Here's what they all said. The total amount of subprime and Alt-A is kind of like subprime, but the cheesy mortgages, no doc mortgages or whatever. The total amount was about $1 trillion. So they said, that was the correct number. And they said, so let's get crazy and assume a 20% default rate. 5% default rate in mortgages is a meltdown, but let's just say 20%. Well, 20% of $1 trillion is $200 billion, which in real terms was less than the money lost in the S&O crisis in the 1980s. And so they said, well, we got through the S&O crisis, and in real terms, this is about the same, $200 billion. It's bad, there'll be losses, but we can muddle through. What they didn't realize is that the derivatives outnumbered the book value 6-1. It wasn't $1 trillion, it was $6 trillion. And now if you apply, even 10% losses, it was $600 billion, not $120 billion or $200 billion. In other words, because Greenspan took the kind of I'll call the ACAD view of derivatives, which isn't incorrect, except he didn't take it far enough, which is, okay, any loan, any security, it's a bundle of risks. You've got, the credit risk is the guy going to pay me back. You might have foreign exchange risk if it's in a different currency. There's operational risk. There's fraud risk. There's interest rate risk. Even if it's not default, you could lose. So it's a bundle of risks. And so the idea of derivatives was like, let's disaggregate the bundle and pass them out to individual counterparties who are in the best position to hold it. Like, I'm really good at credit, so I'll take the credit risk. Or somebody else is a major foreign exchange dealer, I'll take the foreign exchange risk. So take the derivative bundle risk, parse it out to counterparties who are in the best position to hold it. And that's more efficient because everyone will offer better pricing if they're assuming risk that they can bear. And that's exactly right. But what Greenspan didn't understand is that there was no limit on the amount that you could create. That he was assuming a 1-for-1 ratio. $1 billion of loans is $1 billion of risk. Unbundle it, make it more efficient. True enough. But you could turn it into $6 or $8 or $10 billion of loans, in my example, on a $1 billion security, because it comes out of thin air. You just book it. Just write it up and book it. And that's, the Fed didn't understand it in 2007, did not understand it in 1998. I think they still don't understand it because there's no way to track it. In September 2007, I went down and met with a senior Treasury official, the guy who was in charge of this. And I could see this coming a mile away. I told you I was talking about in 2005. So this was before the acute phase in 2008, Bear Stearns and all that. But it was, not long after Jim Cramer. They know nothing. They know, Aaron Burnett, that whole scene. And I met with this guy. I said, look, here's what you need to do. This is the U.S. Treasury. I said, send out an order to all the banks and major dealers and tell them to report to you in spreadsheet form, machine-readable form, all their derivatives position. Don't tell them what to do. You're not regulating them. You're not telling them they got to get out of anything, etc. Just get the data, because this is going to blow up and it's going to end up in your lap, and you're not going to know what's going on. But if you get the data, hire IBM Global Services, put it in secure, treat it like classified information, put it in a secure environment, just have it all good to go so that when this blows, you actually know what you're talking about. And the guy was a nice guy, and he said, this is the Bush administration. He said, no, we're free market guys. We don't believe in interfering with the... That's literally what he said to me. We're free market guys. We don't believe in interfering with the private sector. We want to leave everybody alone. I said, you're not interfering. I said, you're just getting the information. But they didn't understand it. They didn't understand the importance of just knowing where all this stuff was. So whether it's Greenspan and others not knowing